Hi, Izzy. Welcome. How are you?
Doing great, Ton. Thank you so much for having me.
Great, Izzy. We are recording this after shop talk. How are you? How was
Exhausted.
it? How was
Exhausted.
it?
It was great. It was exhausting. But we'll see. We're excited to see what comes from that.
Really? So, what was the setup? I mean, how was it? Tell us. I
Yeah.
mean,
So I
specifically
think
for you and general about the exhibition or the event itself.
100%. So Shot Talk is to me probably from our perspective the largest retail but direct to consumer mix with vendors. I actually think it's probably one of the most well run um, conferences that I've ever gone to.
Hmm.
Run like precisionally between how it's set up and how it's run. This year, I did speak. I was a presenter by evolving tech in the retail space, so that was a great opportunity. That was great for us. But this year, what I did different than prior years is we did a lot of pre work. So historically, I would go to a conference and I would yeah, we call it hunting. You like go in the crowd and you're looking at the thing and you're Googling, are they a consumer business? They're not consumer business. And you know what? I had success with those models. It's just very exhausting and very inefficient. So this year, we spent about 4 weeks in ShopTalk software, opting into both paid and non-paid meetings for potential customers and partners, and that was very successful. So instead of running around the halls and trying to read people's tags, which I still do, we had a lot of prepared meetings, and it's kind of like a speed dating. There's like a whole section. There's actually many sections of the conference, but there's the biggest one had I think it was 1,300 tables, and every table there's two people, and every 15 minutes there's a swap. So
Wow.
that means
Yeah.
2,600 people, and it's full. 2,600 people are strategically meeting each other on what they believe is a very aligned interests. And I actually thought that was so powerful to see, to be a part of, and to see. 15 minutes, power meetings, either it's relevant or it's not. You find out very quickly. But like it's like musical chairs. Every 15 minutes, new people are meeting. And I think the people at ShopDoc are incredible, so professional, and they just run a great organization. It's exhausting, but the it has high potential, be high impact.
Yes, yes. I like the concept. It's very, very nice. What are your general, feedback from the exhibition? The vibes, energy. What are the general topics that people are chatting about?
Vibe and energy is always great,
Hmm.
and I think at least from what we've seen is AI is always the hottest topic. But more than that, if you zoom out on a macro level, everyone is talking about profits and cash flow.
Yeah.
So you go back 2 years or 2020, 2021, it was all about growth, 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 right? Because why? Because public markets rewarded that. So public market rewarded that. That means your Series A investor is pushing you towards it because they want to
Yeah.
exit at some point. So everyone's growth, growth, growth. That conversation's out the window. It's back to the basics. It's back to healthy businesses running profitable and strategic, like thinking outside the box. AI fits in that bucket because all of a sudden people are optimizing better. It fits very well with the times. Um, but on a macro level, it was very focused on profits and cash flow and what are the different softwares and solutions are out there. And what I'm also seeing is that really big companies are there, like Fortune 500 companies. Many companies in the $1 billion plus are there, and they understand for them to lean into this new world of profits and agility, you got to look at the solutions that are out there and compete as aggressively as everybody else. So I found that really interesting.
Yeah, so obviously we're in an era of profitable growth, like as a basic
Yeah,
fundamental requirement, right? By any brand or retailer or business owner,
100%.
and people I think trying to, or at least starting to figure out the difference between cash flow and free cash flow, right? So yes, you have a cash flow maybe in the balance sheet, but it's all allocated to inventory or some other cost. So, and I think today we're going to discuss some really interesting topics that have direct connection to profitability, logistics, supply chains, cross-border shipments. So we would love to learn more about you and your business. But I think you have probably you are like third generation of logistics and business owners, right? So I think you have a very, very unique story. Let's start with that, maybe.
Absolutely. It starts with my one of my most important role models, which is my grandfather, Morris Rosenzweig.
Okay.
Um, he survived the Holocaust. He's from Poland. His family actually run a timber business in Poland for many years. So
Okay.
they're entrepreneurs way back. But he survived, and he had one sister in Toronto, Canada. Came to Toronto, and back then we called it the schmatza business, which is manufacturing for clothing. And he joined a factory back then, because back then most factories were local. Most product was built and created locally in Canada, US, no matter where you were. And so he worked in a factory for a while, then he started his own factory, and he grew a very successful manufacturing business. And my father joined him, and they did business around North America. But what happened was, in the 1980s, is in general, competition started to come in, where you saw factories became efficient to manufacture stuff overseas near the raw materials. Because even though you're producing locally, raw materials almost always came from either India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, China.
Mm-hmm.
So now with shipping containers, which ship boats have been around for a very, very, very long time, but it only got very efficient when they created the container industry on the shipping containers. And all of a sudden, competition started getting aggressive. So my grandfather, he went into a niche area in the fashion business and continued to do very well. But anyone that didn't either go niche, or anyone that didn't pivot and manufacture overseas, most likely went out of business. So we're very fortunate and thankful that we went to niche and built a niche business, and a successful business. But very clearly, you saw over the next 20 years, very little manufacturers existed, like from thousands to like maybe a dozen.
Wow.
And that to me is a once in a generational shift. These things don't happen often. They happen once in a generation. And that happened in the 1980s, and it changed the way business was done. So similar to what we're doing, we're seeing another once in a generational shift. And this time it's not with boats, it's planes. Planes have also been around for quite a while, since the White brothers, but using that to efficiently move product, and using it for direct to consumer supply chain is relatively new and has gotten extremely efficient. And we believe this is another once in a generation shift in the way business is done. That's a little history, yes. That's how, I'm in the manufacturing supply chain business. I guess you could say it's in the blood.
Yes. Interesting. So you talk about the 80s, right? With the new era has evolved or has emerged, standardization of containers, primarily ships that are moving containers around the world. And now we talk about a new era which is evolving, right? The era is probably fast delivery. So tell us more about your company, right? Tell us more about Portless and what is the opportunity and what's pushed you to found the company.
Absolutely. So at Portless, we do what we call direct logistics. So typical supply chain, and this is true if you're a retailer or if you're a direct to consumer e-commerce business today, or most businesses. You manufacture wherever it may be. Let's say it's China. So you manufacture 10,000 sweaters. You put those 10,000 sweaters in a shipping container. You got to wait on average about 60 days. 60 days till it gets to the US. Once it gets to the US, you're bringing it over the border. You're paying import duties. Then you're bringing it to a US facility. And only at that point are you selling these products to your customers.
Yes.
And then it takes another 4 to 7 days to do the delivery. That's just, the way of the world. And to what you said prior, which was cash flow versus free cash flow, when product is in inventory, it's the worst place money could be. And if it's on the boat, on the water, it's basically dead money. You can't do anything with that. So that's just the way of the world since the 80s. And what we've seen is the more successful a business becomes, the less free cash flow they have. They have even a hard time paying their bills. They have a hard time investing into maybe new technologies or new employees to grow the business because it's sitting in dead cash. We take a different approach. We say,
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt you. Let's repeat that again.
Which part?
That the as successful the business is, the less cash flow it has, right?
Yep.
Let's stop here for a while, for a second. It requires, I think, more clarification. So please elaborate on that.
All right, for sure. I like to give my favorite example is Nike. If you read there's a great book on Philip Knight called Shoe Dogs. And he talks about Nike was very successful pretty much from the get-go. Right from the start. They were selling shoes first on the back of his van, and they started selling shoes across the US. And what ended up happening is the more shoes people bought, the more production they did in Japan. In the early days was in Japan, which means he had to lay out the money for production. So he was selling tons of product. Customers loved it. We want more. No problem. I'm going to double my production. So that means all his cash he had, plus all his profit, plus extra money to borrow from the bank is now in a factory in Japan. And then it's on a boat. Yeah. In the meantime, you got to pay employees. And he talks about how his creditors would come to his facility, had two creditors at the same time trying to talk to him. And he would like walk around the factory so they don't find each other. So they realize that they're both creditors. That's the way of the world, right? Like the more success you have, it means you need more inventory, which means the less free cash flow you have to actually run your business and pay your bills. So very often the early days of a business, you don't really feel it. You're like, oh, I put $5,000, I put 10 grand in inventory and selling well. It's actually the more successful someone is, all of a sudden you're in the million or 2 million or 5 million to 20 million. That's a lot of money. You might have $4 million in inventory in a given time or more for larger and enterprise brands. Forget about it. It's insane. So I think that's an area that people don't realize when they're getting into e-commerce, where success is actually dangerous if it's not planned well. You know, devil's in the details. Devil's like, where is that money being spent? What's the landed cost? That's the area where more success can mean actually less cash.
So you're referring about great planning and, you know, trying to anticipate what's going to happen if the business is successful. So what's the best practice for growth, according to your understanding?
Okay, so I mean, I'll talk about first at a high level. Planning is very hard when you're an entrepreneur. Like you have, no one knows what they're doing, right? I call it one of our superpowers. We're all stupid. Right?
No, like, but at least you need to be confident when you say, right?
Exactly. Right? Like everyone starts the business. Like you're not going to know everything. I think it's okay going into business not knowing everything, and that's why people start businesses. You don't know everything. If you did, you probably wouldn't start it. But I'll tell you, at least for us, the way we approach it is, we just have a different way of doing business. So we say, instead of producing 10,000 sweatshirts, which may have costed you $50,000, and putting on a boat, first of all, you can send us in Shenzhen. So we're probably 2 hours to 2 days away from any factory in China. Once we inbound in our facility, through our API, through our Shopify app or whatever you're built on, we'll say, hey, you got inventory. So then you can immediately start selling to your customer. So that means you're turning inventory back to cash 2 days post-production versus what typically would have been 60 plus days post-production. Now what happens, we'll get the order, you get the order, you send it to us through the app. We will take your sweater, put it in a poly bag, we'll print a USPS label, and we will deliver it to your customer on average on 5.2 days. That means we'll be at your customer's front door, USPS driver, dropping off a USPS poly bag with your product at the front door 5 days later. That means from a customer's perspective, they just had a very normal US experience. They did a transaction. Normal delivery times in the US is 4 to 7 days. Again, we could deliver as fast as 3 days, but the average is 5.2. And USPS driver puts a USPS label and they got a USPS tracking number. So from a customer experience, nothing changes in our model. But in the back end, massive changes. So first we call 3 buckets of advantage in this model. 1 is cash flow, 2 is margins, 3 is globalization. So first, let's talk cash flow. Yeah. You just turned inventory into cash 2 days post-production, where you would have had to wait 60 days. You could not be able to touch the product or sell it. Now you're selling it on 2 days post-production. Then you can ask yourself, did I need 10,000 sweatshirts? Well, historically you needed it because you had 60 days of dead nothing. Yeah. So you need 4 months of inventory with constant overlap. In our model, you can send it to us in 2 days or a couple hours and a pallet at a time. It doesn't need to be a container at a time. Maybe you can lower your inventory to 4,000 units instead of 10,000 units. Yeah. All of a sudden you just freed up cash. So not only, and also out of stock, here's another invisible loss. If you're during Christmas season and November 10th, you're sold out of your sweater, historically you'll be like, okay, I'm sold out for the season because if I put on a boat, I miss Christmas anyways. That's lost revenue. So we say, no, go back into production, restock 10 days later. It's now November 20th. You're 3 days before Black Friday. Go to market, collect another 5 million of revenue. So we allow you to capture out of stock. We allow you to lower inventory risk, and we allow you to move inventory into cash faster. This is just all in the bucket of cash flow and agility and simplicity. Now let's make you more money. Gross margin. How do we do that? Our warehousing is cheaper. Our pick and pack rates are cheaper overseas. There are no container costs because containers don't exist in this model. There's no import duties with Section 321. As long as the order is under a value of $800 with Section 321, it is import duty free. That can be up to 43% savings for apparel brands. And shipping rates start at $5. So as long as your products are light, this doesn't work for heavy or bulky items. As long as your products are light, we can deliver, we start at cost-effective shipping rates, import duty savings, container savings, and cheaper warehousing. So you have better cash flow, better margins. And the last part of this is we do this to 50 countries around the world. So instead of back in the day moving inventory around the world or paying DHL $30 to Europe or $45 to Australia, we could do it under 5 days. We could deliver under 5 days to Europe for under $5. Local experience, Royal Mail, Australia Post, whatever the local market is, we'll deliver in that carrier. So customers around the world have local experiences. We help you go global with less inventory risk. It's one inventory hub servicing all these countries. So that's what I was referring to earlier. This is a fundamental shift into the way e-commerce can be done. Because if you can now have fast cash, better cash flow, fast inventory to cash, better gross margins, this industry isn't going anywhere. People love direct to consumer. There's hundreds of billions of dollars in direct to consumer.
Sure.
But brands need to get smarter, need to play the game differently. And this is just uniquely what we believe is a major shift, the way the game can be played and the way the business can be played, that will allow brands to be more profitable and have better free cash flow.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. So actually you're doing like Shenzhen to consumer direct shipping, right?
Exactly. So, and a consumer has no idea. They think we're in Texas because we do injection. We inject 6 points around the US. We'll take the order, we'll sort it, we'll do digital clearance, customs clearance. But the customer just gets a USPS package, USPS tracking number. 2 days later, it's scanned in Texas. 2 days later, it's at their front door. So from a consumer side, super normal US experience. But from the brand side, you get all these benefits.
Amazing. So because of the reduced cycles, right, and response time and delivery times, brands can take a faster decision on lower quantities in terms of commitments. They can probably broaden product line, more SKUs, or and take a closer look at the profitability in a very more manageable time frame. So tell us more about how do you do that? What's beneath the hood, right? What do you actually do? I mean, there is obviously a technology component to it. There's obviously a lot of logistics, connections. Tell us more. It's very interesting.
Yeah. So from a technology side, depending on your tech stack, let's just keep it simple. Talk Shopify. You simply download a Shopify app. We're now a location. Excuse me. We're a location inside your. So Shopify has multi locations. We're just a location called Portless. You send us which products you want to send to us. So let's say you had a tag Portless, or you send us a file, and then you send us inventory. So let's just say you want to start, today's March 25th. You met us today. Love the idea. Well, tomorrow we can meet you. You download the app. You just tell your factory, hey, this is the new address. You're going to send it to Portless in Shenzhen. We will inbound it. We will send you inventory updates. You sell like it is normally to your customer. We will get that order on our end. We'll do the pick and pack. And what we do on our end is we do sorting. So we will understand where your customer is, depending where they're in the world. Let's say US, 6 injection points. We will sort it as close to the customer as possible. So if your customer is in LA, we're going to put it on a pallet, on a cargo space that is going to be injected near LAX. Versus if it's in New York or New Jersey, that's going to JFK. So we have to understand where it's going. Excuse me. Then we'll do digital clearance, customers clearance. There is no duties because it's under $800.
Yeah.
And then we make sure it gets delivered to your end customer. And there's many different carriers depending on the product. Cosmetics has certain products, battery products, depending on the raw materials. We understand the raw materials. There's a little work to do that our team discusses with the brands. But we'll make sure it goes on the right cargo plane, injected to the right area in the US, and take care of all the digital clearances in advance.
Interesting. So brands are communicating with their manufacturers in China. They are shipping the products to you. You actually have a local warehouses and facilities. You are storing these type of products in China, and then you get orders. So how do you position yourself? Are you like a 3PL or 4PL? Is it something new?
No, so we're a mix of both. We have our own facilities in China because We believe to do this properly, you need to control the experience. And if you don't control the experience, things get messed up very quickly, very fast. So there are, let's say, maybe Chinese 3PLs that do this. Between the tech stack, between the quality control and the experience, things go haywire very quickly.
Sure.
On our end, we consider us to be the brand's most important partner. Because you could have a great product, but if you can't deliver it, or if that delivery is bad, if there's mandarin on your packaging, your brand risk gets affected. So we take our part in our customers' business extremely seriously, and we want to make sure that every part of that. Now, we're also working in Vietnam. Vietnam is in a bonded facility, and that's in a partner facility. So as we grow outside to other countries, India will be there as well. We will make sure that we understand every single nook and cranny of this business. Some will be partner facilities and some will be our own facilities, depending on the area.
So it sounds like it's kind of a white glove type of service that you're providing, which is totally, perfect in this era that we operate, right? I mean, brands are looking for more specialized type of suppliers, and they're outsourcing a lot of activities, both on the marketing side, supply chain side, obviously. So tech is not enough. Tech plus services is probably the right approach these days. So
100%.
how do you feel from your experience?
100%. Yeah, for us, we see also, we don't work with brand new brands. We're not built for I have an idea. Right? You got to first figure out distribution before you can optimize supply chain. If you're optimizing supply chain before you launch a product, that's just the bad method. You got to figure out a great product, figure out distribution, how you're selling that, e-commerce, wherever it is. Then you want to optimize supply chain. So for us, our brands are already at decent scale. It could be as low as a few million, or it could be as high as 50, 100 million, 200 million, and in enterprise even larger than that. But we understand that once you're at that scale, your brand name matters. And if your brand name matters, there is no there can't be any risk to this transition. So we make it as simple as possible. We make it as seamless as possible that your customer has no idea the transition is even happening.
Yes. So where we are, where Portless is right now? I mean,
say again?
In your life cycle of the company, where are you right now?
Yeah. So I would call it we're north of Series A, I would guess, from a raising perspective. We have, so I'll give you a high level context. I've been doing this business for 10 years. I started in 2012, doing this a long time. But we actually built this business as a consumer business. So the infrastructure we built, I ran a consumer kitchen accessory and home decor business on this model, millions and millions of shipments. And then about over a year ago, we had people say, hey, can we leverage the infrastructure you built? Then over the course of the last year, we actually transitioned to be 100% B2B supplier. So we started as a consumer business, and we understand the pain of it because we ran it. We had problems with cash flow. We had problems we understand the importance of a brand experience, how every part of it matters, from packaging to, if you want, inserts, to making sure the tracking numbers updated immediately. We started that consumer business, and now we took that infrastructure and we're just applying it to our B2B customers right now. And now that's all we do.
So what are the good things that you hear, and probably some of the challenges that you face when you go to market?
As a brand in general, or for
No, for Portless.
Yeah. So for the good things is we're fortunate to be in a place where this is such a strong value add to our customers, where most of our business is referrals. So we have one customer, they like it. They're like, hey, you guys got to talk to Izzy on Portless, and we just been growing that way. Very fortunate. On that end, the expansion demand is growing so quick that we need to be react as fast as possible. So we know we have brands that want to be in Vietnam. So to open up there, we don't open up any facility or any business service unless we've tested internally for months. Because we'll take a product, we'll just sell it on Shopify just so we understand the local carrier options, the local logistics, how fast the tracking numbers are, making sure bonded versus non-bonded. What's the difference for that country? So we are getting the strong demand, which is pushing us to go into other areas. But we also, that can be painful because we want to do it right, and there's just no room for error in this business when you service other businesses. So that is growth pains, but we're happy with growth pains over other pains.
Yeah, these are good problems to have, right?
Exactly.
Word of mouth. It's really nice. So it's well done. Yeah. Well done, Izzy.
Thank you.
What else? What else did I miss in terms of things that you want to share around Portless and, you know.
Yeah, I think to me, this is just kind of, we talked earlier about shop talk.
Mm-hmm.
Brands today have to think about profitability. I think it's just the most important number. Now, profitability isn't as simple as it is. You also need free cash flow. So I think that's like underneath profitability is also free cash flow. But this is such an obvious focus that's happening across the industry, and it's healthy, right? As much as it sucks, it's
Mm-hmm.
healthy. You're going to have venture pulled a bunch of money back because a bunch of brands in the public markets got affected. So like, oh, is there multiples? I strongly believe there will be multiples in the future. It just needs to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
So, because of what's happening, brands are getting smarter, they're getting more efficient, they're looking for other opportunities. You have AI coming in, which is massive. You have software tools that allow you to analyze your data better and allow you to analyze where your profitability is. So I think all this is a forced shift to the industry, which will pay dividends years to come. So you're going to see newer brands go public, and instead of them, unlike the previous brands and where they're burning cash and they're not profitable, I believe you'll see a lot of strong brands being built on e-commerce that have great cash flow, have great margins. Then they'll get great multiples in the public markets, and then you'll see money coming back in more full force. And it's hopefully we don't fall back. History repeats itself. Hopefully we don't fall back to free money and growth again. I'm hoping that this healthy aspect to commerce stays, and I think it's better for everybody.
Great. Izzy, what tips you can provide to professionals in the logistics or supply chains profession?
In general, I always, at least for the way I've had some interesting experiences around Q4, and I've actually seen this from other brands as well. So I'm not alone in it. When you go into Q4 and you're trying to understand, you're trying to gauge how much inventory you should have. And this is even if you don't use Portless. Let's just pretend you're selling Walmart stores, or you sell in FBA, whatever it is. Being as strategic and smart as possible on the factory and supply chain side is the difference between $100,000 or $1 million in inventory versus $10 million in inventory. And what we say is two things. One is, in general, there's room to negotiate in China today. Because demand is weak there, both the local and international markets, the open-mindedness to make lower MOQs and still give great pricing, we're seeing that across the board. So don't be afraid to ask. Factories are getting used to lower MOQ. They're willing to take lower MOQ, even though their margins may not go higher. But that is the difference between, how much cash you have out the door at any given time. And another thing that I've had experience with when I was running my own consumer business, and I've seen being done many times, is very often you think you need to fully produce your entire inventory at once. And then before you have to pay the factory. Mm-hmm. When really the factory just needs to know they can lock the raw materials. So very often you could spend, maybe it's $100,000 in locking in the raw materials, and it's sitting in your factory floor. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to go bad. And then as you need it, you can start producing, and only then you're paying the factory. You're paying the factory either post-production or FOB or however you do it. Mm-hmm. But locking in your raw materials allows you to be a lot more agile in when you need to pay your factories. So in general, I think we're in an interesting time where you could negotiate. Factories are open to doing lower MRQs, and understanding if maybe you can leverage the idea of buying raw materials versus actual full produced product.
Yes. And Izzy, what are the things you're proud of in your career?
That's a good question. I think for me, and any entrepreneur that starts a business and no idea what type of roller coaster they're about to go on, which I think it's our superpower, not knowing, is you got to just stick it through. So there's highs and lows, and everyone says this, and everyone says it because it's true. You just got to stick it through. You got to optimize. You got to be agile. You got to be willing to move with the industry. You got to be willing to move with the economy or move with where the commerce is going at that time. And I think for me, I was fortunate to do that. Like I started as a consumer business. Apple privacy updates came, and then all of a sudden marketing went out the window, and your attribution, you're blind, you had no idea what you're spending. It was a painful 12 months. But if you push through, and then now, Meta solved their problems. Now there's TikTok and there's new distribution channels. So I think for any entrepreneur, it's really going into business. You have no idea what's going to happen. That's fine. Just know you'll get, so-called punched in the face a lot. And you just got to be agile and go with the business where the business takes you.
Yeah, you talk about tenacity and being agile. I think, two important points to have in mind. By agile in your mind, but also agility in your tech stack, obviously, right? And if anyone is today, even a brand, a retailer, it's not just software companies, not just tech companies. Tech is everywhere, right? Needs
100%.
to be smart. Izzy, this is the part when you're sharing with us a fun fact about yourself
Fun
that
fact.
most of your professional network are not aware of, right? So
Yeah, this is a
it's
good
not an
one.
easy one.
This is a great one.
Yeah.
Very few people know this. Um, the community I grew up in, I was actually meant to be a rabbi. I actually
Okay.
have a rabbinical degree.
Wow.
So I spent 3 years in advanced studies, rabbinical degree. I have a BA in Talmudic law. I don't have a BA in business, but I've ran businesses throughout that whole time. So
Wow.
yeah, most people know I'm actually I'm an ordained rabbi. Who happens to enjoy business, so
Great, great,
in business full time.
great, Izzy. Thank you for sharing. Anything else you want to add?
Um, I don't know. I got 3 kids. Life keeps busy, so I think
Wow, nice.
like you said, you got 5 kids. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you're running a business. You got kids. It's incredible. Incredibly thankful, and I wouldn't change it. I love it.
Amazing, Izzy. So, Izzy, it was really, really interesting. I really like what you're doing. I wish you all the best,
Thank you.
and best of luck.
Thank you so much for having me, Eitan.
Thank you. Bye bye.